What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Football season is officially here. Look, I don't care if it's just the preseason and it doesn't count. It counts to me because we've gone half of this year without any football on. So anytime there's some preseason action to watch, I'm going to tune in, I'm going to enjoy myself, and I'm going to be thankful that we finally have some NFL action on. And I wanted to come on here and give you guys my reactions to the Thursday night preseason games that were played between the Panthers and the Patriots and the Lions and the Giants. New England's quarterback situation is really weird right now. And the Giants, although this is the preseason, none of this counts. There were a lot of positives to take away in their win over Detroit. So before we dive into all of that, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Aura. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself from data brokers who sell your personal information online to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. Drake Maye made his unofficial NFL debut in their preseason opener against the Carolina Panthers, and it was really underwhelming to say the least. If they were only going to allow him to get 2-3 drives, only throw 3 passes, which 2 of those, one was a screen pass, the other one was a check down to the running back on 3rd down, they might as well have just told him not to dress out, stay in his street clothes, and watch the game from the sidelines. Because what the hell was the point of throwing Drake Maye out there just to play things safe and conservative? When you have a rookie quarterback, the preseason is the perfect opportunity to let them get loose, let them get their feet wet for what's to come when the regular season rolls around. What can Drake Maye take away from this performance? What, he handed the football off, threw a couple of 2-3 yard dump offs to the running back? Me and you could have done that. What the hell was the point? How about calling a few deep shots downfield so we can see Drake Maye push the football downfield vertically? It made no sense how Joe Milton got way more reps than what Drake Maye got in this game. And plus, they opened the playbook up way more for Joe Milton than what they did for Drake Maye. And they drafted this dude 3rd overall in the draft. That made no sense to me. I was really frustrated when they took out Drake Maye and he was replaced by Bailey Zappi. Why is Bailey Zappi still on the team? Why is he taking meaningful reps away from Drake Maye when Drake Maye, coming out of North Carolina, was considered to be a project? And why is he considered to be somebody who needs a lot of development? Because he still is fairly inexperienced and he's raw. The preseason is a great opportunity for Drake Maye to make mistakes so he can learn and develop from them and also have something to take away, whether it be positive or negative, because you need something to analyze when you go to the film room tomorrow and you don't really have anything to talk about or analyze with Drake Maye because there isn't anything to analyze. What are you going to talk about? Handing the football off to the RBs a couple of times and throwing a couple of screen passes and dump off to the running back? Like, what the hell is the Patriots coaching staff doing right now? When CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson made their preseason debuts last year, they didn't just throw a handful of passes and only get 1-2 drives. They actually had a good amount of time to go out there and learn and help get themselves better prepared for the transition from college to the NFL. The preseason, if you're not going to play any starters, can be a great learning tool for the younger players that you have on your roster. Playing things safe, you shouldn't be doing in the preseason. If anything, this is the perfect time to be letting it rip. Let Drake Maye throw the football downfield. Like, I'm really confused about what the New England Patriots strategy is when it comes to developing Drake Maye. Meanwhile, Joe Milton made his unofficial NFL debut, and he not only looked better than Drake Maye, but he looked better than any other quarterback that played in this game tonight. Right now, in my eyes, Joe Milton is quarterback one down there in Foxborough. And all of the reports that we've heard coming out of training camp about how Joe Milton has looked better than Drake Maye were proven true tonight, because not only did he just look more calm and collected than what Drake Maye and the other QBs did, but he was actually making some really impressive plays. He had one where he was running around, getting outside the pocket, trying to buy time for receivers to get open. Nobody got open, so he decided to just tuck it and run with it himself. And he also had a really nice 30-something yard touchdown that was a beautifully thrown ball to the receiver. Joe Milton could end up being the Patriots' future at quarterback. And I know it's really early to say that, but I told you guys a few months ago, my theory for why New England drafted Joe Milton late despite taking Drake Maye was because he's Gerard Mayo's insurance policy just in case Drake Maye doesn't pan out. He, that being Gerard Mayo, is a defensive-minded coach. And we know that with defensive-minded coaches, they don't really know that much about offense, so they're not that great at developing QBs. So why put your job security on the line in the hands of one quarterback when you can have two just in case one doesn't work out? Now, we weren't expecting Joe Milton to be better than Drake Maye, but the NFL is weird. And that's why I always had this strange suspicion when the Patriots gave their reasoning for why they took Joe Milton. They said that he had way too much talent to pass up on. And you saw that in this game. He has a rocket launcher for an arm, and he is a way better athlete than what Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye are. If I was naming a starter right now in New England at quarterback, I would be going with Joe Milton. He just looks way better than anybody that was thrown out there on the field, and he's been pretty good and consistent throughout training camp. And when Joe Milton was in college, everybody always knew he had the talent to be special, and he always looked really good in practice. But come game time, he normally tended to struggle. But he has all of the physical tools to be one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Hell, he already has the strongest arm in the NFL. I might take it a step further and say Joe Milton has the strongest arm in NFL history. He can throw the football the whole entire length of the stadium. There's a lot to be really optimistic about when it comes to Joe Milton and what he potentially could be in the NFL. And for him to play as well as what he did in the preseason really caught me off guard, because he looked way better tonight than what I ever saw him look playing for Tennessee. So either he's a better fit in the Patriots offensive system than what Drake Maye is, or Drake Maye was a lot rawer as a prospect than what a lot of us thought. Because even though Drake Maye and Joe Milton both were considered to be major projects coming out of the draft, Joe Milton was supposed to be a bigger project than what Drake Maye was, because Joe Milton, it's like his accuracy wasn't that great at Tennessee. He'll stare down receivers. He had more that he needed to work on going into the NFL than what Drake Maye did. But right now, Joe Milton has looked tremendously improved. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, you might as well not even let this brother even go out there with the ones anymore. Let Drake Maye and Joe Milton run with the ones so they can get all the experience, get the chemistry and camaraderie down with their teammates. Because Jacoby Brissett isn't going to last too long as a starter from what we saw tonight, man. He may only last 1 or 3 games until the Patriots end up benching him for either Maye or Milton. The question is, who is that going to be? Patriots fans want it to be Drake Maye because they invested the third overall pick into him. But sometimes with how the NFL is, there are random things that tend to happen that nobody could expect. And Joe Milton, being the franchise quarterback for the Patriots, could be one of those weird situations that you see very often in the NFL. Because the NFL, there's so many variables that goes into determining how successful a quarterback is. Sometimes a guy needs more development than the next. And this could be a similar situation to what we saw with RG3 and Kirk Cousins a few years back down there in Washington. RG3 got drafted in the first round. Kirk Cousins was a mid-round selection out of Michigan State, and Kirk Cousins turned out to be the better quarterback of the two despite being drafted later on. Joe Milton, I'm really fascinated to watch him for these next 2 preseason games because I've been keeping up with him a lot in the preseason. I was really high on him coming out of the draft. Some people thought I was tripping even having him in the top 10. A lot of folks didn't have him no better than an undrafted free agent or a 7th-round grade. And there was a large assumption that he probably wasn't even going to last that long throughout training camp until he got cut. And we eventually would see him in the XFL or the UFL, whatever they call it. But right now, Joe Milton is the best quarterback in New England. That may be surprising. It is to me, but the NFL is just weird like that, where these kinds of situations tend to happen. Now, I'm not writing off Drake Maye because, as I said earlier, there's only so much you can take away from his performance when you only handed the football off and only threw 3 passes, 2 of them being checkdowns. So I want to see Drake Maye get some more meaningful action in their next preseason game. For the Carolina Panthers, man, their offense looks completely awful right now. The 2 quarterbacks they threw out there, Jake Luton, he was decent, but the other guy out of Louisville, he was garbage. He was inaccurate on the majority of his passes. He looked rattled, timid back there. If these are the Panthers' 2 best options to be their backups behind Bryce Young, they're in serious trouble. Where was Andy Dalton at? I guess they didn't care to throw Andy Dalton out there because he's a vet, and maybe it would have been a little bit disrespectful to throw somebody that's been in the league as long as he's been in a game like this. But the offense, not only did the quarterbacks look bad, but the wide receivers didn't look that good neither. I didn't see nobody that was really getting open that consistently, and there was nobody really making a lot of big plays. So the Panthers' offense was really horrendous in this game. And normally, when you watch these preseason games, you don't see a lot of good offense. That was evident by the Giants and Lions game. There wasn't a lot of great offense being played in that one either, but you at least want to see a couple of big plays. I mean, we didn't really see anything. All I mostly saw when I was tuned in to the Panthers snaps on offense was them going freaking backwards. So hopefully when they end up throwing the starters out there in next week's preseason game, the offense looks better than what we saw tonight, because this was absolutely embarrassing. Now I want to move on to the second Thursday night preseason game between the Detroit Lions and the New York Giants. I'm going to start off with the New York Giants. There were a lot of positives that take away from the Giants winning week 1 of the preseason over Detroit. Tommy DeVito looked really good. Drew Lock, he didn't look too bad, but he did throw a pretty terrible interception. And there was Brian Dable on the sideline coaching him up, telling him the mistake that he made, and then he got banged up, which made him have to come out a lot earlier than what the Giants wanted him to. And when Tommy DeVito came in, not only did he look really good, but he looked way better than what he did last season. He was getting the ball out fast. He was doing a really good job of reading what the coverage was that the defense was throwing out him. And the preseason, you normally don't see a lot of exotic looks. Everything is pretty basic. If a team's running cover 2, it's pretty evident that they're running cover 2. If they're running cover 3, it's pretty obvious to tell they're running cover 3. But the Giants' offense was looking like poetry in motion when Tommy DeVito was underneath center. And what was really impressive about how DeVito looked is that you don't really have a good chance to get on the same page as the guys that you're playing with in the preseason, because you could be running with the twos mostly throughout training camp. Then you get into these preseason games and you're running with the third and fourth stringers, guys who are either on the bubble to make the roster, or they're either going to be cuts or practice squad guys. So for Tommy DeVito to look as accurate as what he did says a lot about the time that he takes into his preparation, and that the Giants may need to give this dude a second look when it comes to being Daniel Jones' backup, because right now it seems like Drew Lock is penciled in as the lock sure-in thing to be the backup to Daniel Jones, and if Daniel Jones flames out, he's going to get the next opportunity to show what he can do at quarterback. But really right now, I would love to see way more Tommy DeVito, because the Giants may just have something in this dude. And when I was watching him last year play, I never thought that he was bad. Even when the magic started to flame out a little bit and he started to struggle, I always thought that with him getting another year to learn Brian Dable's system, get comfortable with this offense, he could be a really good backup and maybe a low-end starter where maybe you just need somebody to get you by for a couple of games until your starting quarterback comes back healthy. If he gets injured, Tommy DeVito, I feel, will be really good in that role. And I was really surprised that they signed Drew Lock when you think about how well Tommy DeVito played in some of the Giants games last season. So Tommy DeVito, don't write this dude off. Some people think that he could end up being a roster cut, and he was asked about that a few weeks ago, his future with the Giants, and he said straight up, if they get rid of him, it could end up being a mistake, because there definitely is going to be a few teams out there that are going to want to claim this dude. And I don't see him being a practice squad guy. He definitely is good enough to be a backup, and he was way better than anything that the Detroit Lions had out there at quarterback to start the first half. If you ask me, keeping it real with you, Tommy DeVito was way better than Nate Studfield. Why is Nate Studfield even still on the Detroit Lions? I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, because there's some more things I want to talk about with the New York Giants in this game. Eric Gray is RB1. And I was really high on Eric Gray when he was coming out of Oklahoma last year. Explosive with quick acceleration. But what made me so impressed watching Eric Gray's film last draft process was how good his vision was. He can see the hole and accelerate. And in this game, there was a touchdown run that he had where the blocking was really good. Shout out to the offensive line. But he made some really good cuts with the ball in his hands. He knows where to go. He knows how to get north and south with the football. He isn't doing all that dancing and juking around in the backfield. You give him the football, he gets to where he needs to go. He does it really quick with a lot of suddenness. And that's what you saw every time Eric Gray got the ball in his hands and he had some decent blocking. Devin Singletary isn't going to be the full workhorse back in this Giants offense. This is probably going to be a running back by committee. Devin Singletary isn't a bad running back, but here's what I'll call average to maybe slightly above average running back. With Eric Gray having this good of a performance, if your plan, being Ryan Daboll and company, was to just give Devin Singletary the bulk load of the carries this year, you strongly need to reconsider that. Because Eric Gray is good enough to be a complimentary back in a handful of offenses. And he's way too talented to just let him sit and be a special teams guy. I saw him on a punt return blocking. I was like, what the hell is Eric Gray doing out there blocking? There was a time when Oklahoma had no quarterback going up against Texas a few years back, and Eric Gray was still Wildcat quarterback. He was the only way they could even muster a yard of offense. You know, this dude is a really dynamic running back. He may not have the breakaway speed that you would like from a starting running back, but he definitely has everything that you look for in a really good complementary back. The vision, the ability to get yards after contact, make guys miss in the open field. I can't wait to see more Eric Gray throughout training camp and the preseason. And the last thing that was really impressive about the Giants' performance in their win over Detroit was how well the offensive line played. Not only was the O-line good when it came to pass protection, but they also were really good at opening up running lanes. And I know that this is just the preseason. There's only so much you can take away from this because a lot of this looks good now because the speed of the game is a lot slower and you're matched up against other guys lining up on the opposite side of you that are third and fourth stringers that probably won't be starting. But with how bad the offensive line has been for the Giants the last 5 to 6 years, anytime the old line plays good, whether it be in the parking lot or in the preseason, wherever it is, you got to take that as a win and a positive. Because with how tremendously bad New York was on their offensive line last year, to have some improvement in that area in the preseason definitely shows that they're heading in the right direction, at least taking a step to figuring out the answer to their everlasting offensive line woes. So you definitely do have to give them a little bit of credit for how well the O-line played, because most of the times in the preseason, the offensive line is always a travesty because you're throwing guys out there that don't have no chemistry, not a lot of reps with each other. You're mixing twos in with third stringers, and the offensive line play is pretty much a shit show in most of these preseason games. So when you can get a really good performance like what the Giants got tonight out of that unit, you got to give them a round of applause. The last thing I want to talk about before I get up on out of here is the Detroit Lions side of things, mainly their backup quarterback situation. If Jared Goff goes down with the season-ending injury, the Detroit Lions are absolutely screwed if Nate Studfield is the backup quarterback for them, because this dude was absolutely garbage. He was garbage last preseason. I don't even know how he ended up making the roster, but his first half of football was really hard to watch. There were about 4 or 5 interceptions that he should have thrown in the first half of this game that end up being drops, or the defense just was out of position, but he's not good. Hendon Hooker, in his first couple of drives, to me, already solidified himself as the backup to Jared Goff. One drive, he had a couple of penalties that went his way. It was a roughing the passer penalty, and then there was another one that they had in the red zone. But he made some really good throws. He was getting the ball out of his hands quick. He also showed his athleticism, which was really encouraging to see him running around, picking up yards with his legs, considering the fact that he came off a really gruesome ACL injury to end his college career. So for Joe Milton, you look at him being a former Tennessee Vols quarterback and playing well. Hendon Hooker was starting over Joe Milton when he first got to Tennessee for a reason. And that's because the thing that made Hendon Hooker a projected first-round pick for the majority of his senior year until he got injured was how well he threw the ball with anticipation and with accuracy. And when you're coming from those air raid style systems where it's quarterback friendly, a lot of the stats are heavily inflated because you're throwing the football 50, 60 times a game. Hendon Hooker, with how accurate and how well he throws the ball with anticipation, he elevated Tennessee's scheme, which is considered to be gimmicky because most of it would never work at the NFL level. But he elevated that offense to an elite level. And you saw the drop-off between him and Joe Milton last year. So for Hendon Hooker, the Detroit Lions have a guy that if he plays good enough, not only is he going to be a damn good backup for you, but somewhere down the road, as he continues to nurse himself back into football form coming off that ACL, he could be somebody who could be really good trade bait. Somebody's looking for a quality backup that could somewhere down the line turn into a starter. Hendon Hooker could be that guy that you trade and get a third, fourth round pick out of that. And that's really good value to get for a guy like Hendon Hooker because third and fourth round picks most of the times turn into starters for you depending on what position you choose to use with that pick. So Hendon Hooker right now is the backup in Detroit in my eyes. If you throw Nate Stufffield out there again, I'm not going to take you serious when it comes to your plans with the backup quarterback position if you're Dan Campbell and company, because Nate Stufffield, I've seen way too much of this dude to know that he should be playing in the UFL at this point. There's no NFL in his future for him. That may be me being a little bit, too overly negative. But I mean, come on, bro. We saw this dude last year. He was doing the same shit, and he hasn't gotten better. So we just got to keep it a buck. Hendon Hooker should be QB2 over Nate Stufffield. Most of us should be able to agree with that. But this is it for this quick episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Just wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on the two preseason games that were played Thursday night. Let me know what you guys observed watching these games, if you guys even tuned in at all. And like, subscribe. Remember that we aren't just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you have a question that you would like answered on a future episode, you can send them in the DMs on Instagram at JT_Sports_ and on X at JT___. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.